We are wrapping up the week and wrapping up the month of January on this Friday episode of One Soccer Today. He is Gareth Wheeler. He is Oliver Platt. I am Adam Jenkins, and this is 30 minutes of Canadian footy chat. And in that 30 minutes, we will discuss, amongst other things, the Concacaf Champions Cup, big signings that might affect said tournament, a big signing from the Canadian Premier League, a player on the way out, our Tony Bet top picks, and our favorite Festivus-inspired segment, yellow card and red card. We do begin, however, with something of a bombshell. I know it certainly got the One Soccer group chat going. It had a lot of Canadian footy supporters asking, will we see Sergio Ramos play a match in Hamilton, Ontario? That's right, the sextuple centurion of Real Madrid lore, along with Sevilla, Spain, and Paris Saint-Germain lore, has reportedly signed with Monterrey, who is famously Forge's opponent in the first round of Concacaf Champions Cup. So that means perhaps, Oliver Platt, we could see him debut against Forge in Champions Cup. Are you expecting to see him take the field amongst CPL greats like Kyle Becker, Tristan Borges, and perhaps try to thwart the attack of the king of CONCACAF, David Choinière?
Well, if he doesn't, I think we'll know why. Because he doesn't fancy it. Lack of bottle. You know, I think that'll be the obvious conclusion that we have to draw if we don't see Sergio Ramos on the pitch. So, look, guys, go to this guy's Instagram page, okay? It's just lines with sweaty gym selfies of how good-looking he is at 38, how fit and strong he is. He's ready to go. Okay, prove it. Come on then, big man. Let's see it in Hamilton. Let's see it in -10. You can do it in Madrid. Can you do it at Tim Hortons Fields? We'll find out in just a short few days here now.
Or Hamilton Stadium. Gareth, your thoughts?
Oliver Platt trying to bait Sergio Ramos into attending the dance that will be in Hamilton next week against Forge. I love this move. By the way, we should clarify, there's Instagram fit and then being football fit.
Wow.
The filters, the angles, things that you can do. It lies, or it can lie. It's not always telling the truth. But I have no doubt that Sergio Ramos is an absolute stud. The problem is when it comes to playing in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, he hasn't played since the end of May, and a little thing involving registration for this tournament as well. As of recording, I don't believe pen has been put to paper officially. He will be joining the club, but if there's a chance of playing against Forge FC, I'm assuming that would be in the second leg. What's so cool about a story like this is we're discussing Sergio Ramos and Forge FC. And it's a relevant conversation to have. This is what's so cool about the Canadian Premier League and the development of CONCACAF competitions in this region, is that the football world just becomes a little bit smaller. And you have all these random connections with like footballing greats. Like I just Giorgio Chiellini was playing in this tournament, right? With LAFC, another a true great of the game. So the fact that a Canadian Premier League club, we're debating or questioning whether they might go on and face a 4-time Champions League winner, a 5-time La Liga winner, an 11-time FIFA Pro World 11 player. Like, it's just remarkable for me. A World Cup winner.
How many CONCACAF
So bring it on.
That's right.
Bring it on. Big goals. I love how he's going to wear 90. 0, but I love how he's going to wear 93 as well to commemorate the 2014 93rd minute goal against Atleti, which brought the game to extra time where Real Madrid won 4-1. I just love all this stuff. So bring it on. More of it, the better from where I stand.
That would certainly be a very intriguing and very exciting set of visuals should it happen, and we'll be curious to see the roster that Monterrey.
I can chirp him because I'm going to be in Victoria next week.
That's right. Ollie will have nothing to do with the allegedly sub-zero temps in Hamilton at Hamilton Stadium. I'm practicing that now so I don't mess it up on the broadcast. But Ollie mentions Starlight Stadium. That is, of course, going to be the host for Cavalry once again in CONCACAF Champions Cup. They are also playing a Liga MX side, and that is Pumas, and it will be Cavalry's first time playing a Mexican opponent. They did have another experience against Major League Soccer competition against Orlando City last year. And Cavalry is who we want to discuss today. If you missed the Forge chat, that is available, of course, on the One Soccer YouTube channel from yesterday's show. But we're going to speak of the Red Sash, the Cavalry, the regiment, whatever you want to call them. They are the league champions from 2024, Ollie. And this league champion side that will be playing against Pumas looks eerily familiar to the one that defeated Bobby Smyrniotis and Forge in the CPL final, minus one pretty notable name being Dan Klump. The question I have for you is, how much does last year's experience reinforce the belief, give them that extra edge, the understanding of what it will take to try and win this first leg to give themselves any chance in leg two?
Yeah, I think it will help, particularly obviously because so many players are coming back who were part of that this time last year, and so they actually do have that experience, and it's not just something that's kind of, you know, intangible that you're talking about in terms of playing in a Concacaf Champions Cup game. They have seen it, they have experienced it, and I think what has also changed for Cavalry is their preparation has probably been different as a result of what they learned last year. I think they've had a more substantial preseason before this game instead of after this game in the lead up to the CPL season. That should help them. I also just think that maybe this is a bit of a more winnable match than Orlando City was last year, at least the first leg. Orlando brought all the big guns. I think they're a better side than Pumas in general, to be honest with you. I'm not sure what kind of squad they're going to bring with two Liga MX games immediately either side. So the second leg is a different story. That's going to be twice as difficult to do everything, including breathing. But the first leg, I think they have a better chance this year than they did last year.
Wow.
Where do you fall on the expectation scale here too?
That surprises me because Orlando City was starting their season at the exact same time.
Yeah.
Pumas will be 5 games into the Clausura season, finished 4th in the Apertura. They brought in some players, so they're going through transition a little bit with Carrasquilla from the Panamanian midfielder from Houston Dynamos joined them, Duarte from Alaves. They have some real good talent in that team as well. I'm just surprised that Ollie didn't call out Cesar Huerta, who ended up going to Anderlecht a few weeks ago.
Didn't fancy it.
That's the reason why he left. He just didn't want to fancy a date against Cavalry over 2 legs, right?
That's a great point, Will.
So it's going to be tough. The thing with Cavalry is that's going to benefit them the most. Yes, Dan Klump is a massive loss, and I'm not sure how they will replace him just because he was such a unique, different type of player for this team. But other than Klump, William Akio played in last year's CONCACAF Champions Cup. Meyer Bevan did, but they've kind of moved on from him. They've added Hernman and a couple other sides. Generally, the squad has stayed the same, so they can kind of live off that experience. Gutierrez is being assimilated into the team and some of the additions that they made last offseason, and they haven't really made changes. So it's kind of like just a matter of them picking up where they left off last year and trying to be as fit and as sharp as they can be heading into this competition. So absolutely, they're in a much better place than they were a year ago.
Well, more on Concacaf Champions Cup early next week as we count down to the matches on Wednesday and Thursday. For now, however, we want to discuss Grady McDonald, and it's probably one of the final times we will say Grady McDonald's name on this program because it has been announced that he is leaving the Canadian Premier League on a big move to Club Bruges. We don't have the exact dollar figure, though there are some numbers floating around on social media. Take them all with a grain of salt unless you hear it from a reputable source. I will say, however, that we can confirm it is the second highest transfer fee in league history, trailing only Kwesi Poku of Forge last season. Garrett, this is obviously another slam dunk for Vancouver FC. It's their first big move. It's going to be a nice chunk of change for them. We know the player. We know the player has a lot of potential and a bright future. I'm curious, though, what your stance is on this with the CPL and how they have developed players in the past, because it seems like this is becoming a more frequent conversation about players moving on with decent sized transfer fees. Do you think the CPL through their first 6 years has done enough, has sold enough to say, you know what, this is a successful part of our league, what we've been able to do so far?
First off, I take umbrage to the fact that you say we won't be discussing Grady McDonald's name ever anymore on One Soccer Today. We do a great job. we got to do a great job of following and tracking those players that move out of the Canadian Premier League and following their success stories and the trials and tribulations along the way. And that's the thing. He's a dual national, isn't he? Like, there's every bit of a chance that he could be a Canadian men's national team player if he develops to that point. So take that, Adam. Yes, the Canadian Premier League. The Canadian Premier League has been successful in moving on players. And it started in the early days with older players and Major League Soccer and domestic leagues taking note. And now it's become much more of a worldwide entity. Canada is a first world country that seemingly still is a little bit of an untapped market. And the more that they rise in prominence in terms of, in footballing terms, more young players are going to get the opportunity because it's still a relatively cheap place to go to get players that have been, raised and nurtured in footballing terms in a decent enough way. So I still think there's untapped potential there. And I think that certain leagues around the world are taking advantage of it more than others. Young players like McDonald, this story needs to play out more often. If I'm going to criticize anything about this move, is we didn't get to see more of Grady McDonald on the field in the Canadian Premier League. I mean, he's exceptionally young. I totally get it. He's a teenager, but he only played 407 minutes last season for Vancouver FC. I would have loved to have seen him play more. I think that's what the Canadian Premier League is all about. If you're 15, 16, 17, 18, and you're good enough to play, then get them on the field. I think that this continues to be a priority for the league, and it should be. I think that because he's so young, that transfer fee or what comes back to the Canadian Premier League and their clubs is even greater when that player gets a little bit of exposure, a good broadcast, good recognition, playing at a very good level as well. So players like this simply need to be on the field more. Like Vancouver, I'm really disappointed that they didn't play young players like him more last season because they didn't make the playoffs anyways. And I get it, earning your stripes. I understand all that. But when you have a talent like this, they simply need to play more. So whether it's new signing for Valor, Eric Pop, I want to see him on the field from day number one. You could go across the Canadian Premier League where there's teenage players. They just have to be given a go. And quite frankly, just play more. That's why there is this under 21 initiative. But I think we're at a point right now where that number should even go even lower. I want to see young players play more in the Canadian Premier League.
Oliver Platt.
Yeah, I think it's been really good so far, but I think the exciting thing for me is that I expect it to get better in the coming years in terms of young players coming through and being sold. Like Grady McDonald was 11 years old when the CPL kicked off. And I think it's that generation and even younger who are really going to benefit from kind of the confluence of everything that's going on in Canada right now. The rising tide of the men's national team, the World Cup in 2026, and obviously the CPL as a domestic professional league to take their first steps into the professional game. So you're seeing it with Grady McDonald, you're seeing it with Shola Jimo, who I don't think will be far behind him. And there's going to be players from their generation that, aren't ready at 16, but are ready at 18 or 20 or 21 who are really talented and are going to have good professional careers. So I'm expecting it just to keep building.
Well, you kind of just alluded to the next question that everyone asks. After you're done celebrating rightfully Grady McDonald, what he's accomplished both for club and for the Republic of Ireland's youth national teams, you celebrate that, but then you ask the question, who's next? And I think Ollie might have just alluded to it in his answer there. I'm sure there is an easy one that you could all choose. I'm curious which routes you will take into who is the next CPL player to demand a transfer fee in these six-figure ranges like we've seen in the last year or so. Ollie, let's go to you first.
Me? I think there's a few. Like, obviously, Shola Jimo, I think, is at the top of the list, just based on what we've seen, which is probably even more than Grady McDonald as a young player playing in this league. And the impact he's been able to make at an age where you shouldn't reasonably be able to make one, to be honest, against, senior players. He's done that. He's going to have eyes on him. He's got national team eyes on him. He's going to get a prominent role, I think, with York United this season and continue to build on that. And I think the sky is the limit for this kid. But there are others as well you could go through, like Emil Gazdov had a great year last year up until right at the end when it dipped down a bit. We'll see what he can do to build on that. Another one from Vancouver, I really like James Cameron. I see this kid have some really strong games. I think he's an excellent defender, an excellent athlete. Maybe not the kind of player that catches the eye the way a Shola Jimo does, but I think he's got a bright future as well.
Gareth, I
just want to say, this time last year, no one really knew who Shola was. Now he's getting called into the Canadian national under 17 program. He trained with the men's national team as well. That's because he's been given the opportunity here. The spotlight is being cast on him. The fact that he's playing in the Canadian Premier League. It's also in the Canadian Premier League's interest to allow young players to come out and play in their league and regularly play and make their mark that early, because it's great for professional growth because it provides opportunity. Something that the MLS academies perhaps can't offer at that kind of age. They have to go through the process. Making into the first team is very difficult. I think there's a big sell job that say, hey, look at Shola, look at Grady McDonald, look at the opportunity that we're providing for your son to play first team professional football from an early age. It can just expedite the process. Jima was part of the Toronto FC Academy. He left, joined York, and then obviously his stock has absolutely skyrocketed since then. So there's a big case study here, and it's very competitive through youth ages where players should play and what's in the best interest of the players and the families involved. So this is very much part of the conversation. If I'm the Canadian Premier League, I make moves like this, Kwesi Poku and others, like this is the model that I'm preaching and trying to sell young players to come on and join the Canadian Premier League.
Well, congratulations to Grady McDonald and Vancouver. All the best to Grady. And yes, Gareth, I stand corrected. Let's hope that we are saying Grady McDonald's name in the future. He just has to choose Canada. Ireland, great country. Love to visit. Don't play there. Play in Canada, Grady. Do it. You know you want to. Let's move on to Toronto FC next and discuss comments, from Robin Fraser, who, of course, is getting bedded in with the club, refamiliarizing himself with how the operation runs. And there was a soundbite and some words from the gaffer that raised some eyebrows and perhaps rolled some eyes as well when asked about the goal-scoring predicament that Toronto FC found themselves in last season. 34-40, it is not potent nearly enough for this club, and the gaffer said we might have to score by committee this season, or we will have to score by committee this season. Gareth, is that a red flag for you? Do you hear that and think, okay, nothing's changed whatsoever, the outlook's going to be pretty much the same, and let's just hope for the best and all eyes on 2026?
Those comments are not a red flag for me. It's the truth. Toronto FC don't have a goal scorer, let alone multiple reliable goal scoring options in the team that it can point to right now. Last year in Major League Soccer, Prince Owusu led the way with 9 goals. I think that his deficiencies were plain to see to most people that watched him on a regular basis. Beyond that, Bernadeschi, who's not really a goal scorer, scored 8. Insigne with 4. Kerr and Etienne with 3. You get the point here. So I expect 2 of their top 3 goal scorers in Major League Soccer to not be part of the team for this upcoming season. There's nothing wrong with coming out and saying that if you're Robin Fraser as well, because let's be honest here. Toronto FC are going through a club reset from the top down. There are certain priorities that need to be said out loud, and I'm not sure if those expectations have properly been set as of yet. The expectations within the club for what they need to accomplish are clear to me. First of all is clearing the books, getting them right. Toronto FC need to make sure that they're not losing as much money as they are on a regular basis. The business needs to run in a more profitable way, and that's a big challenge considering their biggest expenditure is player salaries, which are paid in the US dollar, and looking at the Canadian dollar in comparison to that, it paints a pretty grim picture right now. Also, the second priority is getting players out. I think it's a real challenge based upon what these players have shown as of late and some of the salaries that they're on. So that's an exercise that requires patience at this point. Then they're going to try to restructure the club to make sure that some of the mistakes of the past don't repeat themselves. And from top to bottom, they're run much more efficiently from a footballing perspective. Then they need to go on and add what they can to make this team as competitive as possible this year. And that's going to be a big challenge based upon limited space and room. Like, you can't tank like you're in the NHL or the NBA because there's no rewards. And I was away when this happened, but it caught my eye when Toronto FC decided to trade a super draft pick for two coaches. And I understand trying to support a manager at that time. But if you're looking at things on the balance of it, Toronto FC won't be very good. Why would you trade your super draft pick? The last time you traded away a super draft pick to Colorado, that pick turned into Moise Bombito. You do not want history to repeat itself. It seems absolutely stupid for a rebuilding team to make a move like that. So they have a clear list of priorities right now. The first one is buying out Insigne. I firmly believe that will happen. I can't see any way of coming back, and I cannot be convinced otherwise. I think he's gone. Then I think you got to go in and sign in number 9. We'll see what kind of option they can afford, who wants to come here. Then you bring in another designated player, probably a number 10 in the summer, because most MLS teams that are very good bring in a DP number 10, and TFC don't really have one. Then you try to fill the gaps. They need an athletic central midfielder. They need cover for players when they go away to the Gold Cup, just to try to be as competitive as possible. So that's where things are with the club right now. Like, goal scorer, no, but they're lacking a whole bunch of other things, and there's a lot of other priorities right now. So the goal for me, Adam, get this club in position with flexibility and options to be competitive starting day one in 2026. This is a reset season for Toronto FC. I simply don't see things in any other way.
Ollie, of course, I'd love for you to weigh in, but something else to just be maybe not aware of, but something that adds to this conversation is there was also a quote from Jason Hernandez as well, where he said, including Corbinu, we need to add 3 more starters. So that means 2 more. Even I can do that math. Is that enough? Why stop at 3 if this is a reset season? And what do you make of how that might fit into the scoring by committee proposition?
Well, I think the problem is, and the reason why I don't necessarily disagree with that approach, is that every addition is kind of fraught with danger for TFC right now, because if you keep adding and if you try to do too much at once, you can just make the situation worse. Like, I think it would be seriously risky for TFC to go out this window in the position they're in right now and try to add 7 or 8 players of significance to their roster, because what you're adding is 7 or 8 significant salaries. And so if you don't get those right at a very high clip, you're just making your problems even more severe than they already are. Like, this isn't really, for me at this point, about doing for TFC. It's about undoing. That's the biggest challenge, is rolling back the mistakes that have already been made to give themselves more of a blank slate to go forwards. Like, if you had the choice between a completely blank slate, like having no players whatsoever, and having what TFC have right now, you take the blank slate. Like, that's the situation they're in. So there's got to be a degree of that, I think, before they start really making significant additions to rebuild this team.
Sorry, Wheels, anything to add on Hernandez's quote?
No, I think my rant was long enough.
I make sure you exhausted yourself.
But I just want to be clear. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think they got a manager. They brought him in who can bring stability to this team. I think that they need safe hands during this period of transition. They have smart people involved at the club. I think that Keith Pelly and everyone below understand the magnitude of the job that needs to be done here, and a little bit of patience needs to be preached. You have players coming off the books next summer that will allow you to go and add in a proper way. I mean, I just look at things right now, just keeping the ship afloat, try to be as competitive as possible. I think the Canadian Championship has some real priority for this club this year to come out and do some damage in that, because MLS, there's so many teams, and there's a lot of teams that are spending money and improving right now. Unfortunately, Toronto FC just aren't in a position to be one of those clubs at present time.
All right, well, I hope, Wheels, you saved a little bit of your rant energy for our next segment. The final Friday of the month, we're going to bring back yellow card, red card. It's a very simple game. I have the cards. They're in that dresser for everyone's sake. I'm going to stay in this chair and get them for next time we play this game. But the boys are going to give a yellow card to a minor inconvenience and a red card to something in life that they want to see sent off out the door. Ollie's got his arms crossed. He looks fired up. He's going to get the first yellow card.
Not at all. Oh, I'm not feeling good about this one. Like, we've done it a few times. I'm out of material. I've had a good month. I don't have that many annoyances in my life right now. So I have a yellow card. It goes to the Buffalo Bills, who I just enjoy wallowing in the misery of this team as a fan of a divisional rival of theirs. And My yellow card more directly is to the people who are talking about this team as if I should feel some pity or feel sorry for them because they just got done by the Chiefs again. Like, it's 4 times now. No other team would get covered like this. Like, feel so bad for Josh Allen. They just keep getting beat by the same team over and over again. There would be way more scrutiny, I think, for certain other players, star players in the NFL. I don't feel sorry for the Bills. See you next year when you'll make it 5 in a row.
Gareth Wheeler,
Heartless.
yellow card.
Heartless.
Nope.
You clearly don't understand the plight of Bills Nation. Shocking from a Dolphins
Couldn't
fan
care
like
less.
Oliver Platt. My yellow card, this time of year, there's challenges getting in around any city across this country. But I will say one big problem when it comes to that is salt distribution. They salt the roads and the sidewalks based upon ice, sleet, and snow in order to make sure that people are safe. But oftentimes, there's way too much salt in certain areas and not enough salt in others. The distribution is haphazard at best. And if you have a dog that you walk on a regular basis, this is a nightmare for them. If you value any kind of footwear that you're wearing, it's an absolute disaster. I'll even include the pant and sock in that equation. Why can't they just get this right? There's like piles of salt, and the pre-salting of roads is completely unnecessary. Let's see where the ice is going to be before we throw in all this salt, which doesn't just ruin your pet's feet and your clothing, but the roads and sidewalks themselves as well. Just take it easy when it comes to the oversalting.
Why can't they just get this right is my favorite line of today's show.
I will offer this for today. For my yellow card, I have famously switched provinces. I have left Ontario, and with it, there are a lot of
Famously? Does anyone
Everyone's
literally
talking about
announcing
Nobody
that?
knew that. That was very much tongue in cheek. But I now live in a 1 license plate province. I wonder why other provinces make you have 2 license plates. I think it's absolutely
Looks better.
ridiculous. And on top of this, I think it is absolutely asinine
Right.
how difficult it is to update your address. I understand with your banks and with all the different various things you got to do. I want to be able to go to the CRA and say, hey, I moved from here to here, and have that disseminate across the system, because they all need that information anyways. I have literally updated my address 47 times. I'm sick of it. That's my yellow card. Gareth Wheeler,
Can I add a red card really quickly before we
Quickly,
get
you
to Tony
may.
Bet Top Picks? My red card is all those holier than thou people that try to rub it in your face that they're going through dry January. Okay, there's nothing wrong with not drinking
January's
or consume. I get there's nothing to do with that, but announcing that to the world is just saying I'm going to suck for the month of January. I'm not going to go out. I'm not going to see my friends. It's just all about Netflix and chill. Local business, screw you. Waiters and waitresses and restaurant owners, I'm not coming in to spend money in your establishment. It's a selfish move, and you're trying to guilt your, oh, look at me. I'm getting healthy in January. If there was ever a month to go out and support local business and have a little fun in your life, it's the longest, darkest, coldest month of the month. So do not make it dry January. And if you do, go ahead. Just don't rub it in my face. Thank you very much.
Speaking of fun, the Tony Bet Top Picks are next. I really got to work on that transition. But this is the Top Picks presented by Tony Bet, and we will go to the English Premier League with some lines for the weekend. How about Arsenal at plus 108 and Man City at plus 254, Ollie? Are you tempted?
Firstly, really quickly, I had a green cards that we didn't have time to get in, and it's Cavalry's new kit, which was released today, and it's beautiful. The stripe is back. And I'd like, while we do the Tony Bet Top Picks, one of the photos they took to promote this kit to be displayed, which is a model with a horse, and the horse has its tongue stuck out. So if we can edit that into this segment, I'd appreciate it. That's my green cards. Arsenal, I think Arsenal are going to win this one. I think they're a better team than City right now, and I could see them keeping a clean sheet as well.
Gareth, you agree?
Both teams to score and over the total of 2.5 at plus 110. That's my play. City concede every game, literally every game.
The red side of Manchester, Gareth, is where we go next. Favorites United plus 112 against Crystal Palace at plus 254.
No bet. I can't bet on this team. If anything, I go to the under because they simply can't create and score goals. Hopefully, they can bring in someone before the transfer window closes on Monday.
Ollie, can you bet on this game?
It's one of those nightmare games for United, a home game against a mid-table side. I'd be tempted to go with Palace.
A nightmare game unlike this show, which is a show of dreams. And your pals, Oliver Platt, Gareth Wheeler, and Adam Jenkins. See you on Monday.